What's up?
Oh my.
What's happened? Going on? Good to see you. Been a minute. I'm not.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
I'm not really sure why I decided to go on this channel, but this channel's as good as any. Well, at least it is to me. Man, I've been following this. Like so many of you, I've been following the goings on with this.
Oh my.
Holy crap. I mean, that's what the inside of this submersible looks like. And I'm going to break it down, and give you a little context for people that may or may not be up to speed on what's going on here. But basically what we have is a tourist submersible just missing, vanishes close to 2 hours after it takes off, and all what this thing does is it goes down and it explores the wreckage of the Titanic. Now, if you know anything about this show, if you know anything about the show or anything about me, I'm a Titanic buff. I love the Titanic. I love the story of the Titanic. I love everything about it. And there's been so much that has gone on with the Titanic over the years. People taking stuff from the bottom. They didn't even find it until 1985. There's just it's a majestic story. And I know a lot of people, a lot of you out there, myself probably included, are going, why the hell would you want to even do this? Now, there are some of you that will probably be like, well, it's something, it's crazy. But I'll tell you this, and I don't mean to embellish or whatever, but what is going on inside this submersible, if they're still alive, is a nightmare. It's the stuff of nightmares. I have trouble even fathoming what they're going through. It's just a crazy thought. And I'm not one of those people that, I've seen some really insensitive remarks. It's like, well, that's what happens when you have more money than brains and all that kind of crap, you hear, and it's just like, I get it, and not everybody's the same, but oh my God, what these people are going through is just terrible. And I'm just very skeptical. I'm very skeptical that this has a good outcome. Now, one of so basically where it stands now is that it looks like they have had about 96 hours of oxygen, which should be plenty because it's kind of a day trip, I guess. Whatever you want to call it, takes a couple hours to descend to the bottom of the ocean. Then they, I don't know how long the tour goes on. I have no idea. I have no idea. With modern sonar radar, they should be able to find them in no time. They'll be fine. Well, They went missing on Sunday, just a couple hours after they're done. So, no, sonar. The problem with this is you legitimately have to find. I've said this before. You got to find the needle in the haystack. But first, you got to find the haystack. It's incredible what is having to be done. The amount of resources that are being pulled in to this. It's amazing, and not in a great way, to be honest. But yeah, that's right there what the inside of one of those submersibles looks like. And it's just a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare, folks. And I tell you this, um, there's no light. And I'm guessing that there's no more electricity, and who knows? They're going to be in the pitch black, okay, sitting there, trying not to breathe a lot, and possibly could freeze to death. And basically, whoever's in, when I say whoever's in charge, if there is actually, I'm guessing it would be the captain, but basically what he's going to be telling everybody, and hopefully he keeps his wits about him, is, hey, guys, it's going to be this is going to be tough. You're not going to be able to breathe. Now, it's being reported now that there had been banging every 30 minutes, intervals of 30 minutes. I don't know if that's stopped. I'm guessing that there are sort of whatever you would call, they're taking turns, probably banging on the side of this ship or submersible to alert the sonar. Now, so they're saying that they have the area of where the banging is coming from. Now, what could be causing that banging? I mean, your guess is as good as mine, but there's not a lot of stuff down there making noise. So that would be the reason for the banging. That would be how they would need to communicate. But I just don't. I don't know, man. I'm telling you that all I can think about is, look, I've been stuck in an elevator before. Like 13, 14 floors up. It sucks. This is like that times a million. That's just times a million. And so basically what you're doing is we're waiting. Hopefully somebody's going to pick us up. Now, the Navy apparently is now sending out this machine or this whatever that can dive apparently up to 6,000 meters, which is really good because that's how far they're going to have to go, at least that far down. And where they could kind of tether this thing and pull it to the surface if they can find it. If they can find it. They have to find it first. But not only that, now you have a race against the clock, which makes everything worse. They got about 40, probably less now than 40 hours. They have less than 40 hours before all oxygen runs out. And I'm telling you, this is one of the craziest. It's just insane to think about. To think that you're just sitting down there. It's in the 30s now. Less than 30 hours. Wow. And I'm just like I said, a lot of people are going to say, why would they even go down there? Why would they go down there? Well, because it's fascinating. And sometimes people have a lot of money, so they have a lot of freedom. Nobody thinks that this is going to happen. It sounds at first, look, I wouldn't go on this submarine. I wouldn't go on a submarine. I wouldn't go near a submarine ever. I wouldn't want to. But there are people that aren't like me that are, I would consider, adventurous, that, I'm not really into skydiving either, but, there are people that do like to skydive. And I think the complete opposite. I think the complete opposite, but that's just how I feel. I don't think that this thing, they don't know, Susan, if it's sitting at the bottom. I don't think that this will have a happy ending. I'm hopeful that it has a happy ending, but I doubt that it's going to have a happy ending. And so who knows what's going to happen? And I do hope that it is a happy ending, but I don't think that I certainly don't understand the magnitude of what's happening here. I can appreciate it. I can sort of, kind of, sorta, but I can't really appreciate the vast craziness that is happening. It's like agencies from all over the world. They don't know if this thing's on the surface, and they don't know if this thing's sitting at the bottom of the ocean. They have no idea at this time. Now, maybe soon, they're not going to give us real time updates. That's just not going to happen. They're not going to be like, hey, well, Teresa makes a really good point here. This will set regulations going forward. Now, everybody wants to complain about the government, and fine, but I don't know if this is international waters. I don't know. I don't know, man. And I remember when this used to be one of the things that was being talked about, how like, oh, we're going to take people into outer space, and then we're going to take people down to see the Titanic, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And dude, this, this ain't it. This is not, it's a nightmare. I'm just thinking about what they're having to do, how they're going to survive. Has anybody ever been told to stay calm? Imagine somebody telling you to stay calm. These are not people, astronauts and stuff like that. They go through all this testing to see how they would do under pressure situations. Now, me thinking somebody going on a submarine or a submersible, little tiny little piece of crap thing, literally is a carbon fiber ball, or whatever it is, with like what that guy is holding is an Xbox controller, um, with a just a TV. It's just, but like I said, it's not, it's really nothing. It's nothing like high tech. It's not high tech. So how do you stay calm? The first thing that they're going to tell him is, hey, we don't have a lot of oxygen. And as soon as you hear that we don't have a lot of oxygen, that would make me freak out even worse. And I'm sure that that's happening. I hope it's not. I really do hope that it's not happening. But yeah, Logitech. So it's even a crappier version of a Xbox controller. It's just an off-brand piece of crap thing. Special K, I don't know. That's a really good question, and I don't know. I'm not sure. It's literally controlled by a video game controller. That's true. And yeah, apparently there's a child in there with a father like a businessman or whatever. I don't know. I don't know. I have my thought or my suspicions that this isn't. I don't see a happy ending here. I hope. I certainly hope. And somebody said at the beginning of this, this could be one of the greatest rescue stories in the history of, you know, I don't know, nauticalness. Is that a word? Anyway, but it just seems so unlikely. But they're not gone. They're still there. Well, I don't know if they're there or not, but there's still hope. As long as there's oxygen, there's hope. What did I say? Nauticalness? As long as there's oxygen, there's hope. But once again, and somebody just said this, that's not 100% guaranteed. That's true as well. That's true as well. Once you really start, yeah, it's like a, hold on one second. Show you. This is the kind of view that you're going to get. And I think you have to take turns. I think, um, like that's the inside. Is that cool? Yeah, it is cool. I guess it is cool. I'm like I said, I'm a huge Titanic fan, but what? Hold on. What is going on here? It wouldn't surface. Okay. I didn't think it would. I don't know what that is. I'm not really sure what you're talking about. Okay. There's computer simulation videos where you can explore the Titanic. It's cool. The whole thing is that's what I'm saying. It's like fascinating, but is it though? It's one of those you got to weigh you got to know that going 2.5 miles under the ocean in a little tiny whatever you want to call that, it could be very, very risky. And that maybe maybe something isn't going to go well at some point. It's just tiny. What the heck what is going on with YouTube? Why are we having so many issues? Does anybody know? Or is it major? Are we in Glitchtown, USA? Good Lord. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know what's going on. It's just all over the place. They had to, yeah. Look, we all know the possibilities of danger, even just driving a car, getting on a plane. I'm not saying I'm not saying that this is, oh, well, they knew the dangers involved. So blah, blah. No, I don't feel that way one bit. I think that people do things that would be considered risky or, is flying on a plane safe? Statistically, it is, but there are major issues that can arise. And who knows? But the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. The bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. And I mean, I guess the reward is being able to see the Titanic out of a porthole 2.5 miles down below. Like I said, I'm a huge Titanic fan. I'm a huge Titanic buff. I love everything Titanic. I'm not gonna get I'm not gonna get down there. It's just not something I would do. But that's just me. There's people that do it all the time, and I don't blame them. I wish it would be cool if you could afford to do something like that, but I wouldn't. It's not something that I would do. Let me see here. Maybe they won't. I'm not going to play the but I mean, look at this thing. Look at this thing. It's just so simplistic, but
our deep dive starts at sea level in the Ocean Gate workshop.
Cutting this a little bit.
Where the team is putting the final touches on Titan, their most advanced submersible yet.
Brings a tear to my eye.
That's Director of Engineering Tony Nissen.
It's a lot of pain to get here. So it was a lot of pain to get here. We did this extremely fast.
Their goal was to build a vessel that...
Okay, well, so in retrospect, that's not gonna go over well.
Dive 3,800 meters for a mission to the Titanic. Titan is headed there in June. It can dive 4,000 meters, thanks in part to its carbon fiber structure.
The strength, weight, and buoyancy that we get out of it exceeds really any other material out there.
Tony says this frame will feel about 150 million pounds of pressure near the ocean floor, but the team inside won't feel a thing. A team of 5 will squeeze into Titan for each dive and view the wreckage on these monitors. To fly the vessel, the pilot uses a PlayStation controller.
I mean, there's no thank you.
Over 6 weeks of dives, laser scanners and high-def cameras will map the Titanic and its decay over the past century. It's part of a larger project to study the effects of shipwrecks on our oceans.
And this is critically important when you realize that there are tens of thousands of shipwrecks from World War II, many of which sank with toxic chemicals and fuel oil on board.
The final pieces will be put on Titan this week. Then practice dives begin as they count down to their big descent.
Very excited.
In Everett, Gabe Cohen, Como News.
Okay, that is pretty cool. OceanGate plans to survey the Titanic every year moving forward. They're also bringing 54 paying civilians along, and they hope to increase awareness of ocean exploration.
Jeez. Hold on.
And now I want to bring you
This will be
a
interesting.
legendary name in the world of deepwater exploration and ocean engineering. Retired U.S. Navy Captain Don Walsh is a former submarine commander and this country's very first ever submersible pilot. Captain, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview tonight. You're just the perfect expertise for this. I'm going to start with a very simple question. Do you have optimism that they are going to be able to find this vessel?
No.
That's a hard answer.
Good. I mean, hey, you know, we're on TV.
To hear. Tell me why you feel this way.
I've been around this business for more than 60 years, and I've seen a whole lot of things. I'm one of the signatories on that letter you're talking about, the New York Times, because those of us in the deep submergence business are really concerned. We only need one accident to get everybody excited and start questioning whether or not this was a safe kind of business, that is, putting man in submersibles, whether that man paid for a ticket or as a researcher or just doing some useful work in the ocean. And so it put a stain on all of us if they had an accident. And that's why we were trying to offer some cautionary advice to OceanGate, but clearly it wasn't.
Okay, so what this man is saying here is that OceanGate had been either warned or, hey, you know, some stuff needs to happen. We're trying to offer you advice, and they didn't take it.
Wasn't taken.
It's hard to have this conversation given that Stockton Rush, the CEO of OceanGate, is one of the people on board right now whose life is in peril. But I do want to dig in a little deeper on this with you if I can. And thank you for, informing me that you're one of the signatories on the letter. Can you help me understand the viewport, which is the big window through which the passengers and the pilot can see what's outside, presumably to see the wreck of the Titanic, presumably to see the flora, the fauna underwater.
Bye.
Is that the issue of this experimental craft, that the way the viewport was constructed, the engineering that allowed for that viewing port?
Well, as I recall, the viewport, as produced by the manufacturer, was not rated for that kind of depth. The manufacturer said this in delivering the viewport. Now, I that's hearsay on my part because this all happened a while ago, and I've gone off and done other things. But that was just one thing. A big thing was how the pressure hull was built. It's a wound filament sort of device, like fiberglass. I'm simplifying, but it's not solid metal. It's made out of probably a carbon glass fiber, something like that. Again, I'm sort of winging it here, but I think I'm close. And what they do is they wind it around and basically make a mesh of it. Well, that's really good for internal pressure. In fact, the rocket motors for many missiles use that kind of structure, because if you've got the pressure inside, then and you're containing it with this woven fabric, if you will, it's very, very strong. But the pressures on the outside, we just don't know enough about that. And all of the protocols that we follow in building these manned submersibles or any kind of pressure, human occupancy pressure vessels like a diving chamber, things like that, we make out of conventional materials like metals, metallic materials, steel, titanium. We know how to do that. We know how to design, we know how to test them, and we know how to measure the stresses and strains put on them. But this filament type of thing, we have no guidance on that. And the organizations, and there's several, they're called classification societies, which set down the rules for the design, the construction, and the operation and the maintenance of submersibles, manned submersibles. And they have inspectors at every stage of the way. So everything has to get approved and signed off. You're built to a standard set of issues. I'm on one of the advisory committees for the American Bureau of Shipping, which is the US-based classification side. They do tankers, cargo ships, and submarines, submersibles. So it's all out there. Why they wanted to do this radical type of hull design, we just could never figure out, we being sort of our community. And that was the essence of our cautionary letter.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider.
So
and don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.
So once again, they've got stuff going on. Just crazy that it hasn't been. It's not tested for that depth, or it's not, safe for that depth. The fact that they're just letting it happen. Let me see. What's the newest? Let's see what the newest one is here. It's from a day ago. Golly. All right, so
it's also
this will be
all the questions.
Okay, here we go.
All the feet. David, thank you for being with me. As a pilot of one of these submersibles, I want, if you can, for you to take me inside this minivan-sized submersible and tell me what you think. Stockton Rush, the CEO, and P.H. Nargeolet, the pilot, what are they doing to counsel the others inside the vessel to survive this?
Well, the type of subs that I have piloted are one-person subs, so the configuration's much different, and the subs that I pilot also go much.
I'm going to talk about that right here.
Shallower.
Right here is where they're going to talk about the banging, which sounds like, they're trying to communicate or have. I don't. But the thing of it is, the rollingstone.com got a hold of some what I think are leaked emails, and what they're doing is they published them saying, hey, like these are we're hearing banging at the bottom of the ocean, or we're picking it up on sonar, and somebody leaked them. And so now they're basically saying, yeah, this is happening
about 2,000 or 3,000 feet, which makes it easier to communicate with the surface. But I think what you would be doing, and of course it depends on the current scenario, is obviously trying to keep life support functional. Now, if say there were a fire or electrical problem, that could very much hamper the scrubbers that remove carbon dioxide from the air, and they would need to improvise on that. You would also have no light, and it would be completely dark. Your eyes would never adjust. There's no light at that depth. So repairs would be very, very difficult. I think they would be doing everything in their power to just stay calm, breathe as little oxygen as possible and try to work the problem and do a self-rescue.
One of the experts I spoke with, David, suggested that they would all be in a meditative state to try to conserve oxygen, breathe slower, and that one by one they might take turns banging on the side of the vessel so as to maybe be caught by the sonar buoys above. Does that sound like it's a legitimate strategy?
Yes, I think it makes sense. This is under the scenario that the sub is on the bottom and one of
The last thing that I'm going to do, and that's just me, and thank God I'm not down there. First of all, I'd barely fit in the thing. But second of all, how I would not, the last thing that I would be doing was being in a I wouldn't be meditating personally.
of the things we're trained for is the biggest threats, especially entanglement. So if the sub's somehow entangled and can't free itself, all it can do is wait on the bottom, and that would be the way you would conserve resources. And banging on the side is one of the best ways, I think, to communicate to the outside that you're still alive.
It's pretty amazing that banging on anything is really the best way to communicate with anything. If you're stuck somewhere, what else are you going to do? You're going to bang on stuff.
You're still here and you need help.
So can I ask you, and I think this is sort of new territory for a lot of us, if they are alive and if this is a snag and they haven't lost all, their electrical system, et cetera, it would be a perfect storm to have lost their comms at the same time as being snagged in a fishing net or on the debris of the Titanic. Wouldn't we have heard by now if they're banging on the side of the vessel?
It's very possible. It depends on what listening devices, what sonar receivers have been deployed so far. It's also very tricky with the way acoustics are in the ocean. I've lost communications with the surface on my dives just because ocean conditions change. You're not using a radio wave like you would with a regular radio. You're using acoustics, and those acoustics get distorted in the water. The other possibilities, if they were entangled and the sub were somehow on its side, the transducer, which needs to point up toward the surface, could be pointing sideways, and there would be no way to get a signal through. So, I mean, we're speculating. There are many, many different possibilities. A lot of it involves working the problem, as I said, but if you're, for example, in
Sonar, radar, listening devices.
Tangled, or if you've had an electrical fire, these are two of the things that they train you for, the things that you're most prepared for, but also some of the most difficult problems to solve.
Can I ask you, I mean, the multiple waivers that you have to sign to be a passenger on board this ship, it's pretty darn clear. This experimental vessel has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body. No one is, unaware of the extraordinary risks of doing this kind of exploration. Is it the same? I mean, for those who are critical, is it not the same as space travel or climbing Everest? It is people who take on these extreme risks to find out more about who we are and where we live.
Yes, I mean, I don't object at all to the idea of tourism going to the Titanic or to see the deep sea. I think the more people we get into this incredible frontier that we have and that has barely been explored, I think that's a great thing. But if you ignore safety and it...
Right. So, and I agree with that as well, but no matter what, no matter how safe you're going to get here, things are going to happen. Bad things can happen when you're in high risk. Like high risk travel industry is booming. Absolutely it is.
It's going to come back to bite you. And I think, as Captain Walsh said earlier, it tarnishes the reputation of all the other programs that are going on. I have never felt unsafe in a sub because I know.
I mean, I would. feel unsafe in a sub.
These are Canadian subs. I know they're built well. I know they've had third-party inspection and certification. You know, I joke that I feel more safe in one of these subs than I do in traffic in the DC Beltway.
Well, I will only say to that, you have guts of steel.
Yeah, come on, guy. Really?
I have always felt scared, just, you know, that snooba. But David Guggenheim, thank you for your expertise. We'll touch base with you.
I don't know if we can really call him an expert anymore, since he said he feels safer in a submarine than traffic, but whatever.
Again on this, and again, we are praying that there is a positive outcome in this. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider, and don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.
Stockton Rush was confirmed today as one of the 5 people on board the missing sub. Don Lynch has been on that sub and on that same trip that the 5 people were taking when they just disappeared. He is a Titanic historian and joins us live. Don, several of the leaders in the submarine industry had real safety concerns about the Ocean Gate sub. You were on it. What's your reaction?
No, actually, I was not on it. I've been to the Titanic on the Russian submersibles some years ago, and the safety precaution was they always sent down 2 submersibles at the same time so that one could rescue the other if it happened, if anything would happen.
So that's smart.
And the other thing was, as was earlier explained in the show, was that the center of those was a titanium sphere, which in theory could be released from the casing and float up on its own. So there were several ways that those could have escaped a situation potentially like this.
What's your reaction to these concerns, these safety concerns that have been raised several years ago?
Well, I'm really surprised, I guess you could say, and I'm hoping that they aren't the cause of the prevention of the rescue. It bothers me, of course, to hear that there are such concerns. And I had never thought about the fact that such open water, vessels aren't really regulated. And I think something should change in that respect, and probably will after this.
But I mean, that just gets into the whole international waters bull crap that everybody always talks about. I doubt anything change. I mean, they already knew that they were doing this stuff. Who's going to enforce it? The International Waters Police?
Safety protocols are one thing, and former passengers on the sub who went down had described the safety protocols as being quite strict. But these are concerns about how the craft was actually designed. The submersible was designed, yes. The materials that were used. Given what you know and what we just heard from the CEO, Stockton Rush, briefly describing it, how did it sound to you? Did it all ring true?
Well, it did ring true.
And diagnosis crime. I'm with you on this. I'm with you on that. How could they possibly find them? I just don't know. I don't know. Hopefully somebody has an idea.
I guess, if the submersible itself is made to high quality standards, like you said, the companies that were involved, the university, everything, that shouldn't be the problem. When I listen to what's going on, the fact that communication was lost within 2 hours of it leaving the surface, I don't believe that the submersible ever made it to the Titanic. My theory is, based upon my own experience, you basically float to the bottom. You don't use power because you don't want to use it up. And when you get near the bottom, you power up in case you have to move around and you're not going to be dropped near the wreck because you're not going to.
I'm sorry, but I mean, that is kind of cool to be able to. It is cool. It's very interesting. I still wouldn't do it.
Land on it. They don't want that. And I have a feeling that there was a power failure when they went to power up as they neared the bottom of the ocean. But why they haven't been surfaced on their own, I don't know.
And what would cause a power failure?
Okay, so it seems like the chat people are wondering, does it have a toilet? Kayla says it has a toilet. Brent Montgomery says it doesn't have a toilet. I don't know if it has a toilet or not. Really the least of their problem.
Like that.
I just, it must have done something electrical in some way on board. I don't think there's any external factors. Like I said, I don't believe they had enough time to get to the wreck, so they couldn't have gotten hung up on a piece of metal or anything. There aren't really fishing nets out there. People aren't out fishing that far out in the ocean over the Titanic. I never saw any fishing nets on my dives.
I mean, the friggin' thing is like 22 feet. Even if you had a toilet, it's not really going to matter that much. If you're going to take a crap in the submersible, it's going to be a problem for everybody.
And so I think something happened with the submersible itself.
People, like, if you've ever been on a Greyhound, you know what I'm saying?
That's my gut impression. And that there wasn't any external factor. And I have a feeling it was electrical. But again, I can't explain. I'm just a layman, but I can't explain why it didn't return to the surface on its own the way it was designed to.
I don't know how big the Russian subs were that you went down in to see the Titanic, but this one is really small. Like, you can't stand up in it, and you're sitting and sort of hunched over because the walls are curved around. Can you imagine spending 4 days in there?
No, I
No, of course, no.
can't. The Russian ones, the center was a 7-foot sphere, and 3 people weren't incredibly comfortable, and you couldn't have gotten 5 into the Russian ones. And so, no, the amount of time, and if you're out of power and if you're at the bottom, you're in complete darkness. There is no light source of any kind down there. And it just must be horrifying. It just has to be terrifying for these people. I want so much for them to be found and be safe, obviously, but what they're going through has just got to be horrific.
What is the best case scenario here? We know that, hours are ticking by. We know that it's incredibly important to remain calm because panic, you use up more oxygen, and they have a very limited supply. It's supposed to run out, we think, Thursday morning. What do you think is...
Once again, and I share a name with you, that's just, first of all, that would suck, but it's also not going to be the first thing that imagine ripping farts in there. I'm good, but I get your point.
The best case scenario here, the most realistic best case scenario.
Well, I would hope that it will be found at the surface soon, that it will be out there floating around, that they just haven't located it yet. That is the absolute best. But that in the very, very soon, it would be found floating at the surface.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find.
Yeah, and I don't think that's. Let me see.
Joining us now is explorer Fred Hagen. He visited the Titanic wreckage twice aboard the submersible now missing. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. So I got to ask you just a big picture question first. Do you think that this vessel is safe?
No one ever said the vessel was safe, and Stockton Rush never said it was safe. So I get the concerns now. There's been an emergency. There's been a catastrophic failure, and there's a tendency to look back, and the tone is, oh, it's got camp parts. It's unreliable. No one ever said it was safe. Stockton Rush didn't say it was safe. Everyone that participated signed an agreement or signed a acknowledgement.
Man, this guy must be a blast to hang out with. Can you imagine? I mean, just let me hit that again. This guy, talk about walking into a buzzsaw.
First, do you think that this vessel is safe?
No one ever said the vessel was safe, and Stockton Rush never said it was safe. So I get the concerns now. There's been an emergency. There's been a catastrophic failure, and there's a tendency to look.
Yeah. All right, guy. Like, do you understand the question? Us as a public didn't really know that much about this. So yeah, there's going to be concerns now because, well, it sounds like people were just taking this trip sight unseen going, holy crap, we could possibly die.
Look back, and the tone is, oh, it's got camp parts. It's unreliable. No one ever said it was safe. Stockton Rush didn't say it was safe. Everyone that participated signed an agreement or signed a acknowledgement that they could die or be grievously injured. So the fact that you use a game controller, die or
Dude, good eye. That is a painted picture of William Clinton, former president and governor. What the hell? Why does he have a picture?
there's been an emergency, there's been a catastrophic failure.
Thank you so much, Kathy Lynch, for becoming a member. Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
And there's a tendency to look back, and the tone is, oh, it's got camp parts. It's unreliable. No one ever said it was safe. Stockton Rush didn't say it was safe. Everyone that participated signed an agreement or signed a acknowledgement that
I can already now. This guy's friends with the Clintons, so I can already tell
that they could die or be grievously injured. So the fact that you use a game controller does not mean anything. This is a sophisticated, state-of-the-art piece of equipment, and it was operated quite efficiently with a game controller. So I'm not sure what the point is. I understand where you're going with that, because there has been a catastrophic event, but no, I do not think that it was poorly planned.
Crap.
I think it was an inherently risky operation, and it was very dangerous. No one ever said it wasn't. In fact, the opposite was true. We were told repeatedly that we could be facing death or serious injury if anything went wrong.
Well, but
yeah, but guy, every time something goes wrong, you could always be facing injury or death. That goes along with driving a car. They're using a PlayStation controller stick.
They do invite journalists to come on. There's a guy who's on there right now who brought his son, his 19-year-old son, as well.
Yeah.
You do wonder, and again, you know better than me, right? This is the first time I'm hearing about this. You're an expert on this. I'm not. But when people say it's dangerous, you've got to accept the risks, et cetera. Anytime someone goes skydiving, right? Someone says, hey, there are risks, et cetera, right? This feels like what you're saying is this is a heck of a lot riskier than that.
This is a heck of a lot riskier than that, but I'm going to pose a question to you.
Yeah.
Mankind would never have advanced if they didn't accept risk. We're trying to explore inner space here. And Stockton Rush is a visionary that saw the future at the bottom of the ocean. And he
all right, take it easy. Take it easy. Come on. What? It's a visionary.
Basically realized his dream. And the fact that he's taking
Is that the guy that's stuck in the submarine? Is that who he is?
people to the
Is
bottom
that who he's talking about?
is not just simply a game. These aren't tourists. Everybody keeps saying these are tourists. It's a tourist. It's not a tourist hub. These are serious people that want to contribute to the
No, it is a tour. There are tourists on there.
Science of deep ocean exploration, and they're contributing their funds and their time and their resources to do so, because the future of this world and our efforts to combat climate change are intimately intertwined with the ocean floor. You've got lithium there. You've got all the elements that will power the green economy that we are pursuing.
Oh man. Democrat.
And we have to be able to access it safely without desecrating the ocean floor. That's the vision of people like Stockton Rush. If we were unable to accept risk as a society, we would still be paddling canoes in open water. We would never learn to sail across oceans. We would never have gone into outer space. It's just risky. And I know that, and I know it's horrifying that a father and son are down there. Last year when I went, a father and son went with me. And there are people that I know. And P.H. Nargelet is one of the most wonderful people I've ever met. And I suffer intense pain just thinking of them down there, freezing in the cold in a world of perpetual darkness. It's hard to think about. But that was a risk that they accepted and they took.
And let me
Yeah, just because it's a risk that they accepted and took, that we're not talking. Nobody's disputing that. We're just talking about just be like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy here, but just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Just because you can offer rides to the Titanic doesn't mean you should do it. When I'm talking about charging civilians, these civilians aren't explorers, they're civilian tourists. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Let me say that he's on this trip, right? So Stockton Rush is there. So the proof is in the pudding to some degree about what you're saying. But isn't this still a tourist endeavor to get to see the Titanic? I mean, is that a mischaracterization of what this submersible
He's pissed. Did you see that?
does?
It's an oversimplification. Basically, your
Submersible does?
It's not though. It's not an oversimplification. So what this guy is doing is nobody's saying shut it down. Well, I'm sure they will now. He's just pissed he's never going back to the Titanic.
It's an oversimplification. Basically, you're taking the Titanic, which is one of the most iconic objects on the ocean floor, and you're using it to take people to see something they dreamt about seeing. They want to go. They want to spend their time and resources. They're willing to take the risk. I did it on multiple occasions. And yes, that is the realization of a lifetime fascination with the Titanic, which is the most iconic shipwreck of all time. Yep. And people are spending money to go there, but they're going as mission specialists. They're participating in a scientific mission to determine how quickly the ship is.
They are not participating in a scientific experiment. They didn't pay $250,000 to be a part of a scientific experiment. That's not what they did. This guy's nuts.
Being eaten by bacteria, what the lifespan may potentially be, and they're participating in this scientific endeavor. Yeah. So you can call it tourism if you want, but it's really not. It's not like skydiving. It's not a momentary thrill. It's a serious and dangerous operation that they willingly participated in.
Yeah, like skydiving.
So I disagree with your characterization.
Well, again,
I understand why you say.
Yeah, I'm not trying to mock this. This is deadly serious stuff. I am in no way trying to sit here and say, how could they have done this? I don't know enough. I think I'm representing the layperson here, and you're representing someone who knows more about this, which is why we're having you on the show. My guess is some people would disagree.
I like how he has to explain to him why he's on the show. Basically, what he's saying here is, hey, dude, calm down.
Agree with your characterizations, but nevertheless, hey,
I have no
idea. I appreciate
idea.
you coming on the show. I appreciate you providing your perspective. Fred Hagen, thank you. Thank you for watching.
Guy literally made an ass out of himself. Hilarious. Let me see here.
One of the many problems facing rescuers, the missing sub, is one of the only vessels in the world that can reach the Titanic. The wreckage of the
We already
Titanic
saw
lies
this
on
guy.
the ocean floor, 12,500 feet deep. The missing sub is specially designed to sustain the crushing pressure of the ocean at that level.
Joining us now is Charlie Pereira. He is a former investigator over
Why are all these guys
at the National Transportation
wearing nautical shirts?
Safety Board to sort of walk us through what we know here. Charlie, good to have you. The U.S. Coast Guard just released that the crew that was following this suddenly lost contact with them about 100 minutes in, an hour and 45 minutes in, yesterday morning after the Titan, which is what this vessel is known as, suddenly went underwater in search for the Titanic. Let's go through step by step here, Charlie. If they lost contact 100 minutes in, what does that tell you?
Well, something, clearly a technical problem of some nature. I'm not very familiar with the design or system details of this submarine, but basically you're under tremendous pressure at that depth. As you can see there, 5 people on board. The pressure is the primary threat issue. There also could be external threats. You've got some deep water swordfish and other stuff like that that could potentially impact the communications and structural cables attaching the submarine. So, there's a variety of potential threats.
That's terrible.
You talk about pressure. I guess this is very much like a plane, right? You need cabin pressure when you go up, or a submarine needs pressure when it goes down. When we talk about hopefully rescuing, take it from there.
It's significantly different than that. When you're in an airplane and you go up, you have less pressure, and you have to pressurize the interior of the vessel in an airplane to maintain a cabin altitude and proper oxygen levels. When you're going down below the surface of the ocean, just like when you dive down to the bottom of a swimming pool, there's extreme pressure that builds up from the water overhead, and that tries to crush anything below it. And so these vessels are built to withstand that pressure. Of course, you can't have system and structural failures as with any mechanical system. So, there's also external threats, that the various marine life that could get entangled or attack the connection between the vehicle and the surface. So, there's the design threat is the pressure from water trying to get into the vessel and crush the vessel. So that's the threat trying to design against.
Is the question now, Charlie, whether they have it?
Yeah. That's exactly what they're doing.
Or don't have it, don't have pressurization down there, and thus have oxygen?
Well, you don't really need pressurization inside the vessel, although I'm sure that's one way that you could also protect it.
But shout out to News Nation for not striking channels that stream them
against the vessel being crushed. But again, I'm not familiar with the design element of this particular vessel.
It's the worst.
The primary threat is the pressure causing a structural failure and water getting inside and the people drowning. Obviously, that's the first concern.
Yeah. According to the site here, you can see Ocean Gate.
God, look at that thing. That's the inside of the friggin' thing that you're at the bottom of the ocean.
Is the country involved? They say there is life support for 5 on board for 96 hours. It's believed that contact was lost Sunday morning, so we're now probably going on.
And by the way, that is an optimistic time. I mean, anything in there going on, if one of them freaks out and starts hyperventilating, if they're all doing it, if they're just that is the optimistic number of hours that they have.
On what is that, around 30 hours? What can be done here, say, in the next 60 to 66 hours?
If the vessel is not tethered and they don't have a means of retrieving it, then short of the vessel itself being able to propel itself to the surface, they would have to get another means of retrieval down to them to bring them up as soon as possible.
This is 2.5 miles below.
So here's the thing, Glitters Forever. They are now. The military is involved. Yeah. We've covered the bathroom thing, Shirley.
The Titanic, and we should stop and point out they were going down there to try to get a glimpse of the Titanic. This is a company that has done this in the past, that runs tours, as you heard Sloan mention there, $250,000 a pop to to get to do what is really a once in a lifetime opportunity to see one of the most famed events of the 20th century. And that's what brought people to this moment. But, you know, going.
God, the fact that the Titanic has been gone for so long and it's still being brought up today in significant news is crazy.
Going forward, Charlie,
It's never not trended. It's always a topic of discussion.
When we talk about retrieving them, this is, as I mentioned, 2.5 miles down, 2.5 miles deep. Is there any sort of mechanism upon which a private company or the Canadian Coast Guard or the United States Coast Guard has the ability to retrieve these folks?
The United States Navy has what they call soup salve, which we used to partner with every now and then to attempt to recover aircraft wreckage and other vehicle wreckage under the service. Navy soup salve and the Navy assets are among the premier entities that might be capable of retrieving that. And I'm sure, given the lives that are at stake, that the U.S. government and private industry are exercising all of their options, but they're running out of time. So somebody's going to have to do something really quick with a lot of money and a lot of energy to try to get this done as soon as possible to save lives.
Is there the hope that communications can be restored, or Charlie, do we believe at this point that all communications have been cut off?
There's always hope. You know, you got some smart people down there in that vehicle, and you got a lot of smart people on the surface.
Thank you.
Attempting to engineer away. You know, God's bless.
Yeah, I want to come on and talk about this. This is the kind of stuff that fascinates me, and I'm very into the Titanic, but this story is crazy.
And I'm sure our country and other countries are going to exercise every resource that they have available to them to try to save this crew.
You know, Charlie, you've gone in plenty of times, I take it, when there have been tragedies and learned from them and sort of put the puzzle pieces together to try to figure out what happened and maybe to hopefully prevent things from going forward. If you were the lead in this case, not looking at something from after the fact, but right now, whether you're Canada, the US, this company, or some sort of joint venture, what would you do? Like, how do you game plan this out? How do you try to save these folks? What could be successful?
The first thing you do is have some subordinates contact all of the best technical entities in the world that are associated with it. And then while that's running in the background, you establish communications with the company that is responsible for this vessel. And you get all the facts as soon as possible from them. And you try to establish a game plan, and then you act on that game plan. There's no...
Girth, I believe that they have a piece of equipment. I don't know the name of it. I saw it earlier. But they have something that can go down 6,000 meters and can winch stuff. And that is, I believe, the U.S. Navy, but it's not not a sub.
No budgetary concerns. There's no logistical concerns. You just do whatever is necessary to get these people back.
You know, Charlie, I don't mean to cut you off, and it's not your fault, but I'm going to point out, I don't really hear specifics. Is it because we've never seen something like this before, and thus there's not a playbook or there's not some sort of manual as to how to go about it?
Well, I've done aviation, rail, highway, marine, pipeline, hazmat, space shuttles. Everyone is different. And,
right.
You know, you're not equipped with a playbook for each one that says, here's what you do in this case. You know, you use your engineering judgment and your engineering education to engineer the best possible solution as rapidly as possible. I know news media a lot of times wants, you know, immediate action and everybody to know everything, but that's just not how it works. You do the best you can with what you've been blessed with, and then you execute.
Yeah, no, we're trying to be as realistic as possible here. It's an extraordinary circumstance. We're talking about a group that's gone down to try to survey the Titanic, 2.5 miles underneath, underneath the top of the sea. communication gone, and now the scramble is on to try to find them and save them. 96 hours of life support, says that company. Charlie Pereira, former NTSB investigator.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you
I'm
for joining us, for your time, and we appreciate the insight and perspective, sir. Thank you.
No problem. And keep in mind that the end product of this is going to be lessons learned and how to prevent this from happening again. When you have new...
All right. He said bye already. But the problem is, how do you look? If you go down there in a submarine, and I don't even know if you can or can't, I don't know anything about that kind of stuff. But what I'm saying is, how are you going to, you can't, how are you going to bring it back up? How are you going to bring them back up? You can't hop out of your thing and hop into the other thing. What is that? Sub. Oh, here it is. Deep sea salvage system. Navy deep sea salvage system. I can't find it. Transcom, supporting search, submarine. I just saw it earlier. I don't know what the hell. A big magnet would probably not work. God, I wish I could find that. It always bothers me. See if I can find it. They can't even find it now. They could be alive. What's that one? This might be interesting.
Verts, you're an astronaut. You went out into space where look, if something bad happened, we know from Apollo 13, everybody drops everything and then rushes to try and help. Is the promise sort of is for anybody who serves their country and goes overseas. I'm wondering though, the responsibility of people who say, look, I so much want to see the wreckage of the Titanic that I'm going to get into something that we know.
What? Kelly, I don't know what one that
serious
is.
Safety issues, critical problems, and yet now there's a lot of people in the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Coast Guard and the Canadians who are having to put their lives at risk to go try and find them and help them.
Well, you say we know that it has serious problems. I don't know that that's true. I'm not an expert on the boat. I know that there was, one article, but I'm not sure that that means that everybody knows there's serious safety problems. There's also been a lot of things written about the actual pressure vessel that have been pretty good. But as far as rescuing them, the Coast Guard is there. It's an expensive thing. The Coast Guardsmen risk their lives to rescue people. Our men and women who are policemen and first responders risk their lives to rescue people. That's just kind of what we do as humans in a great country like America. I'm sure that they don't want to cause any danger, to people doing this, but if they're able to rescue them, just like in Apollo 13, I think it'll be an amazing, inspirational story. And I haven't given up hope yet. It's a tough problem to find them down there. I know that. But we haven't found the wreckage yet. So we haven't gotten the bad news yet. And until we do, that means that there's still
a good
hope.
point. And look, and you've got 36 hours of oxygen, and I'm going to get a little technical here, but none of the sonar buoys that we know of from or submarines that were running sonar looking for Russian submarines or others picked up the sound of an explosion or an implosion underneath the water. So there are reasons to be hopeful that at least they're still alive down there. Chris, you were trapped underwater once in somewhat of a similar situation, not for 2 days and 12 hours, but give us a sense of what goes through your mind when you realize that you're deep underwater and there's not much you can do.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head really there when you say there's not much you can.
What do you mean? What is CBS? What is CBS Sacramento? You said CBS Sacramento has an update? It's a good question. I don't know. Let's see. I'm not seeing an update. I'm looking at CBS Sacramento right now. Oh, look, they faced a lawsuit. Is that the update? They said, yeah, I don't know. I mean, so this is from like 2 hours ago, though.
Yummy, zesty, poolside, lakeside, always satisfying. Give me Blue Diamond. Crunchy, tasty, sweet.
By the way, those are really good. Blue Diamond.
Savory, always satisfying.
Blue Diamond nuts are good.
We began with a race against the clock to find that submersible vessel that disappeared in the North Atlantic Ocean on Sunday. It was headed to the sunken wreckage of the Titanic. Experts say if the 5 people on board are still alive, they will run out of oxygen by Thursday morning. The explorers were heading to the site of the Titanic's final resting place. It's located about 900 miles off Cape Cod and more than 12,000 feet below the surface. An international rescue effort is now underway, including help from the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Coast Guard, and the Canadian Coast Guard. Officials say they've already searched an area about 7,600 square miles with no sign of the vessel. CBS's Roxana Saberi will start us off tonight from Boston. Good evening, Roxana.
Good evening, Jerika. Tonight, the U.S. Navy is bringing in special equipment to retrieve heavy objects from deep under the ocean in the event they're able to locate the missing submersible. But hope for finding survivors is fading. Search crews are frantically scouring an area larger than the state of Connecticut, but so far there's no sign of the missing vessel, the Titan, and its 5 passengers. What are the biggest challenges you're facing?
You're dealing with a surface search and a subsurface search, and frankly, that makes it an incredibly complex operation.
But time is dwindling fast because they're running out of oxygen.
We know at this point we're approximately about 41 hours.
There's no other trip like this.
For the past 2 years, the U.S.-based company OceanGate Expeditions has used the submersible to take tourists to the famous Titanic shipwreck, charging $250,000 per person. At nearly 2.5 miles below the ocean surface, the Titanic is located at roughly twice the depth of the Grand Canyon. Finding the Titan won't be easy at those depths, even if it's floating on the surface. Rescuers are now gaming out different scenarios in the event they find it. Among the 5 missing passengers, Hamish Harding, a British billionaire who flew into space on Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin rocket last year. Pakistani-British businessman Shahzada Dawood and his 19-year-old son Suleiman. And Paul-Henri Nargeolet, a former diver with the French Navy and a seasoned Titanic researcher. OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush is also on the vessel.
We run the whole thing with this game controller.
Last year, OceanGate hosted CBS Sunday Morning correspondent David Pogue on an expedition to the Titanic. But just minutes into his dive, something went wrong.
So apparently those floats there came off the platform. So we're scrubbing?
Yeah, I think that's the consensus up here.
The weight of the situation is bearing down on friends and family. Jannica Mikkelsen spoke with her friend Hamish Harding the day before he left.
It's not good. It really isn't good. It will be a miracle if the crew returns alive.
And we're learning new information tonight about OceanGate Expeditions. A group of leaders in the submersible industry sent the company a letter back in 2018 warning of possible catastrophic problems with the submersible and with its planned mission to the Titanic wreckage. Jerika?
Yeah, we know a lot of people hoping for a miracle. Roxana Saberi, thank you.
Travel to more places for less money with Amtrak San Joaquin's Thruway bus routes. Get the lowest fares every day and
all right, let's go back here real quick.
You can do. I was in a similar situation in that I found myself powerless, really, which is, we assume, is very much the case for them. For me, there was a small period where I felt I could perhaps rescue myself, and it was I was panic-stricken and very frightened, obviously. But I think when I got to the point when I realised that rescue wasn't going to come, and to me, it certainly seemed inevitable that seemingly my demise was imminent. It was strangely calming in a way, and I remember being grief-ridden, really, and I suspect they'll feel similar. It's the deep oceans seem like attractive and interesting and ethereal places, of course, which of course they are. But I suspect they'll be seeing the darker side of it now: the isolation, the loneliness, the fear, really. And so I sympathise a great deal.
Yeah, well, we are very glad that you made it out, and obviously, the having gone through that experience, you bring a different perspective. As Colonel Wirtz, I'm interested in asking about your friend Hamish Harding, which, look, reasonable people can agree, getting into this sort of unknown vessel and going 13,000 feet underwater for 8 hours is at very least a very risky endeavor. And I'm wondering why someone so smart, so successful, accomplished so much, doesn't have to do this, decides, I want to do this, and I'm gonna get in this thing that you don't know if it's going to come back up, really.
Yeah, I think just knowing Hamish, he's an explorer at heart. He loves adventure. He loves to explore, and that's kind of, why did people 100 years ago go to the South Pole? 300 years ago, why did they sail the ocean and to try and discover America? When back then, many of them died, 10 or 20.
So here's my problem with that is that 100 years ago, nobody had ever been there. People have been to the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of videos, hours of footage. Like, it's already been, It's not about it's just them wanting to see it with their own eyes. It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with being, you know, a Lewis. This isn't a Lewis and Clark expedition.
Or 30%, would often die. It's just something that humans do, and we have done ever since there were humans on Earth, and that's what he loves, and we've been joking that he's down there planning his next expedition. Hopefully it'll be a different plan than this one, but I think the kind of folks that do that. Why do people climb Mount Everest? Why do people drive Formula One cars?
Yeah, no, fair enough. Captain, just want to get your final thoughts on this. We understand the Navy's deep sea rescue vehicles are headed at least to the Newfoundland coast, where they could then be put on ships and deployed out. If they find this thing, is there a guarantee that they can get it up in time?
No.
No, there are no guarantees. There are no guarantees under the water like that. But there's still hope. But there is a definite timeline, and I think we need to prepare for bad news.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking as well. I'm not going to Mars either. And Kathy said, sounds like a tourist trip to me. Yeah, me too. Yeah, but people climb Everest. Like, you have to climb that yourself. You don't just sit in a metal tube and then float down for using somebody else's stuff. I don't know, man. Like, there's it's just like, I get it. I get the need and the want and I guess I don't get it. I don't know why I'm saying that. I actually don't get it because I wouldn't do it. So I don't know. Where is the
Titanic wreckage site?
Adventure, exploration, and research for the seriously wealthy, now literally descended into a cold, dark race against time. The desperate attempt to find the OceanGate submarine paralleling the Titanic shipwreck it was visiting off the eastern seaboard of America. In the past hour, US Coast Guard said a rescue ship is now in place with ROV, an unmanned search submarine.
Today, the vessel Deep Energy, a 194-meter pipe-laying vessel, arrived on scene with underwater ROV capability. They have rendezvoused with the vessel Polar Prince and commenced an ROV dive at the last known of the position of the Titan and the approximate position of the Titanic wreck. That operation is currently ongoing.
British understatement from an American Coast Guard. And note, he's only talking about the search, never mind any possible rescue plan. 5 people are on board, believed to be Stockton Rush, who founded the dive exploration company OceanGate, charging around $250,000 per person to gaze on the wreckage of the Titanic.
5 individuals can go on each dive. 3 of those are what we call mission specialists. So those are the folks who help finance the mission, but they're also active participants.
Why do all these guys have the same haircut?
The other 4 passengers are said to be the British billionaire entrepreneur Hamish Harding, Shahzada Dawood, a member of the Prince's Trust Charities Global Advisory Board, his 19-year-old son Suleiman, and the final passenger, the French explorer Paul-Henri Nageolet. Taking people into this environment is what the tourism business is all about. The exact opposite of commercial diving. They take people out for obvious reasons.
I was for 15 years in the North Sea.
Doug Niven has many years' experience of submersible diving around the world.
The oil industry, as soon as there was an alternative to people going in the water, that's what we moved to. Because as soon as you get people in water, it's huge risk. And I think people should carefully consider what they're doing. And the companies that provide that need to think about backup systems.
And in this case, the fundamental safety system for commercial diving, a backup sub, simply wasn't there.
We were always diving with a second man-submersible on board, so that if there was trouble with the first one, you've got the opportunity to go down and assist with an equivalent submersible.
So in a situation where you go down...
What a great point. Kisser Dog says the lab. I wouldn't get on that thing just because it's called the Titan. I'm not very superstitious, but that's just playing with fire. And by the way, that's not even a very... that name is just... that's what I would expect it to be named.
And to these sort of depths, several thousand meters, way deeper than the North Sea, with no backup submersible. What do you make of that?
Well, it's extremely risky. It really is extremely risky, and these people are taking a big chance on health and safety.
Stockton Rush himself publicized the simplicity of the sub's design.
It's got one button, and that's it. Yeah, so we run the sub with this game controller. It's made by Logitech, but it's basically a Sony PlayStation style controller. I got these from Camper World.
Last year, the US TV station CBS filmed on the sub and had to sign this safety waiver.
An experimental submersible vessel
Yeah,
that is not
yeah, I
approved or
can,
certified by
Jody,
any regulatory body and could result in physical
That's
injury,
weird.
disability, emotional trauma, or death.
The sub would have taken around 2.5 hours to reach the wreckage of the Titanic. She dived Sunday morning 8:15 local time. These pictures the last time the ship was seen. 1 hour 45 minutes into the descent at 10 a.m. contact stopped. At their destination, there's no light. Water pressure outside the sub's equivalent to having the Empire State Building on top of you. Temperature 2 Celsius. The passengers will have warm clothing, and as of now, they have 39 hours of oxygen left. The OceanGate Titan sends a ping to the Polar Prince, the mothership on the surface, every 15 minutes. But for at least 7 hours, that did not happen, triggering a distress call to the US Coast Guard.
As soon as we received the report on Sunday evening, we immediately launched search efforts. We flew assets that evening, and we've continued constant surface and air asset searches since that point.
The deepest ever rescue was in 1973, extracting 2 divers from the Irish Sea. They got out with a reported 12 minutes of oxygen left after 72 hours. 1,500 feet, just 150 miles off Ireland. This could be more than 14,000 feet, almost 400 miles off Canada. UK government officials are in contact with the families. France is sending a vessel equipped with an exploration robot. The wreck of the Belfast-built Titanic, which sank in 1912 when it hit an ice.
One of the really, I don't know, one of the things that I find kind of or interesting is they said that there was a bunch of different ways to get back to the surface, but God, what if they did get down there and they're like caught, they're stuck or whatever? Because apparently that has happened before.
Killing more than 1,500 passengers.
Because you'd think if they weren't stuck, that there's 7 different ways for them to descend or ascendedly, descended.
And crew was discovered in 1985, 370 miles off the coast of Newfoundland in Canada. Now again, the epicenter of an international rescue operation.
Alex Thompson reporting there. So let's take a closer look at the vessel and its journey now, because we know that the sub was transported by a research boat from Newfoundland, taken 435 miles south over 2 days to a remote area of the Atlantic near the Titanic wreckage site. And it's here that at 6 a.m. on Sunday, the submersible was launched. Now, the descent to the North Atlantic floor is 3,800 meters. And as you've heard, should have taken around 2.5 hours, but 1 hour and 45 minutes in, all contact with the vessel was lost. The Titan carries 4 passengers and 1 pilot with very little space on board. It's just 6.7 meters long. So for reference, that's about a third longer than you're seeing on this model here. So an incredibly tight space with real concerns now about oxygen supplies. According to the operator, OceanGate, it's equipped with 3 different oxygen systems, including some scuba tanks under the floor panel.
I could see them. I could just see them when they're down there, how they probably aren't. I don't know, man. It's not, first of all, it's just not safe to float that thing around wreckage. I mean, seriously.
Panels, and it's built, as you've heard, to provide oxygen for around 96 hours. And the search team's latest estimate means that this would run out on Thursday morning, our time. A correspondent with US broadcaster CBS, who went on a previous trip in the vessel, said they were all sealed inside it by bolts, meaning the only way out was with the assistance of an external team. Now, the Titan usually sends sonar signals to communicate with its partner boat up on the surface, and if positioned correctly, it can send short text messages too, all of which stopped unexpectedly on Sunday. Matt.
Thanks, Kane. Well, David Mearns is a deep-sea shipwreck hunter and friend of the 2 missing explorers, British businessman Hamish Harding and Paul-Henri Narjolet, a former French Navy diver. Thank you very much for coming on the program, David, on what must be a very difficult day for you, because of, we're all desperately hoping that they're still fine. Assuming optimistically for a moment that they're still alive, what must it be like inside that metal capsule at such depths, in such darkness, with so much terror?
Well, it's your worst nightmare. I'm sure that PH and Hamish and everybody who boarded that sub never thought this would happen. It would be a horrific experience, and the only thing that I can feel somewhat sort of that lessens it is the fact that I know 2 of the gentlemen, and I know that they are very calm, cool, and composed people that have this kind of training to be able to know what to do. And hopefully Stockton Rush, I think that's in his background as well. But irregardless of that, they must be wondering what's happening above them to try to effect their rescue.
We saw in Alex's piece that actually the controls inside the capsule are incredibly simple. I mean, what can they do?
In the sub, nothing. The only thing they can do, and there's some reports that I've just read from my own club, which is how I know Hamish, is that somebody today has heard some tapping. Now, they've got sonar buoys out there. There may be some other hydrophones that the mothership, the Polar Prince, had in the water. It's hard to imagine how they could have heard that, but still, they're at least trying to operate or encourage the rescue efforts to continue on and to be redoubled on the fact that they've heard something which suggests that the men are alive in the submersible.
I mean, assuming that they still have those 39 hours of oxygen left, what do you need to do in order to conserve the maximum amount of oxygen available?
You have to be relaxed. You have to lower your heart rate. You have to breathe shallowly. You have to, minimize your movements. The main thing is you can't panic, and there's nothing that they can do. And fortunately, there's 3 people in there. I don't know anything about the father and the son, but there's 3 people in there that I believe would handle this as well as you possibly could, considering the situation that they're in.
Do you think the journey is too risky?
Well, I think today's not a day to be asking questions like that. Today's a day, and until time is run out, until they're recovered, that we should be focused on getting those men back home. But there should definitely be an investigation into this, what happened, whatever the outcome is, what happened, and our industry needs to take a look at itself about whether this is an appropriate thing to do, to take passengers on really, you know, they are risky. There's no doubt about it. Anybody who signed that waiver would know. I'm sure, I know Hamish would know. Listen, Hamish has been down to the Marianas Trench and a submersible even smaller, a different, totally different type of submersible, but nearly 3 times the depth of the Titanic. So he certainly knows the risk, and PH has lived his life knowing these risks. But whether, you know, the other parties know that, I don't know. But either way, an investigation should happen, and then a lesson should be learned to prevent this, because this is an extremely rare occurrence. I mean, your own package indicated the previous episode of not a military, but a commercial type of submarine having this, being in this predicament was 40 years ago.
Finally,
it's
David,
not happened in my commercial.
Indeed, yeah. And just finally, David, to those of us who've never been this, you know, deep into the sea, who may fail to understand the allure of this, what is the allure of going so deep, so dark?
It's what drives people: the curiosity, fascination. The Titanic is the most famous shipwreck in the world, and that's why there's all this media attention and all these. It's, in one sense, it's helped this rescue effort by happening at the most famous location in the North Atlantic, and people are gripped by that. And Hamish is an extreme adventurer. He's a very serious person, but he's also somebody who enjoys his life doing things like this. PH, on the other hand, does it professionally.
Right.
So I don't think we can question why they do it. We just know they're there and that they need our help.
And we hope the best for them. David Mearns, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, and I think they were sued as well, from what I heard. I don't know. Maybe I can play.
But we start with that huge search, the race to
The
save
BBC.
5 people who are on board a submersible that has gone
This will be
missing
the last one, and then we'll call it good.
in the North Atlantic, close to the wreck of the Titanic. Earlier, the US Coast Guard said that the vessel may only have 40 hours of breathable air left for the 5 people on board. Well, ships and planes are scouring the ocean around 640 kilometers off the coast of Newfoundland in Canada. The search area is as large as the US state
Unreal.
of Connecticut. Officials say an underwater search vessel has now been launched. Well, the Titanic, which sank in 1912, lies nearly 4,000 meters below the surface. On Sunday, all contact with it was lost, with the sub about an hour and 45 minutes into its dive. Our correspondent Jessica Parker has this report on the daunting task that is now facing rescuers.
These are the last known photos of the Titan submersible. They were taken on Sunday morning, just before it began its descent. An hour and 45 minutes later, contact was lost. It's a 5-man capsule that people crawl into. This was filmed by the BBC last year. It shows people being bolted in from the outside. The sub then plunges into the ocean's depths. Those on board are believed to be the British billionaire Hamish Harding, British businessman Shahzada Daoud and his son, French explorer Paul-Henri Narjolet, and this man, Stockton Rush, the chief executive of the expedition company Ocean Gate.
It's basically a Sony PlayStation style controller.
Here he is in a 2022 CBS documentary showing how the vessel was operated via a games console, while construction pipes were used for ballast.
This is an experimental sub. People are informed that it's very dangerous down there.
Questions about the safety of the sub are now inevitably being raised. But for now, the focus is simply on trying to find the vessel. One Coast Guard official I've been speaking to described the search as like looking for a needle in a haystack.
the area that we search is roughly about the size of Connecticut. As we continue on with the search, we're expanding our capabilities to be able to search under the water as well.
The sub was towed out to sea from Newfoundland before arriving at the wreck site on Sunday. It then began its dive in
You're welcome.
coordination with a
Thank you.
mothership, the Polar Prince. Once a vessel goes below 1,000 meters, it'll be in darkness, no light. Farther down is the Titanic wreck, 3,800 meters under the North Atlantic. Mike Reese is one of the few people who've made the trip before. He describes reaching the bottom of the ocean.
When you touch bottom, you don't really know where you are. And again, the compass immediately stopped working and was just spinning around. And so we had to flail around blindly at the bottom of the ocean, knowing the Titanic was somewhere there, but it is so pitch dark.
In the sea's murkiest reaches, this is what people pay nearly £200,000 to see. OceanGate Expeditions says it's getting help from government agencies and deep-sea companies, and it's praying for the crew's safe return. Jessica Parker, BBC News in Boston.
Well, Captain Jamie Frederick from the 1st Coast Guard District has been speaking about the latest search efforts and his team's plans for the next 24 hours.
I'll provide a brief recap of our coordinated search efforts for the 21-foot submersible with 5 people on board, along with providing an update on current search efforts and plans for the next 24 hours. On behalf of all the men and women of the United States Coast Guard and our search partners, we offer our most heartfelt thoughts and prayers for the 5 crew members, their families, and their loved ones.
I'll tell you what, if there's like breaking news about this at any time, we'll cover it as soon as that happens.
Our crews are working around the clock to ensure that we are doing everything possible to locate the Titan and the 5 crew members. Yesterday, we stood up a unified command consisting of expertise from the United States Coast Guard, the United States Navy, Canadian Armed Forces and Coast Guard, and the Titan's parent company, OceanGate Expedition. This is a complex search effort which requires multiple agencies with subject matter expertise and specialized equipment. While the U.S. Coast Guard has assumed the role of search and rescue mission coordinator, we do not have all of the necessary expertise and equipment required in a search of this nature. The Unified Command brings that expertise and additional capability together to maximize effort in solving this very complex problem.
So how will it be solved? Let's talk to my colleague Carl Nassman, who's in Boston for us now. And Carl, we heard there from the search and rescue teams. The first part is simply locating this vessel before they can even get into the logistics of how they might be able to recover it and the 5 people on board.
Yeah, I guess the best way to describe this is kind of a 2-step process. The first step could be one of the most difficult, and that's simply finding the vessel. Where is it? It could be at the very bottom of the ocean. It could be floating somehow at the top. It might have submerged on its own. The second part will be even more difficult, and that's the very technical and very treacherous and difficult and specialized rescue operation that then might take place, because there are very few vessels that are capable of traveling to the depths of the ocean that we're talking about, some 2.5 miles below the surface. That is a very long way. The typical submarine that you might think of only goes a few hundred meters deep, and we're talking about thousands of meters deep. I just want to set the scene for you. Where we are is Boston. We're about 900 miles away from the site of the shipwreck of the Titanic, and that's where we believe that submersible, the Titan, is located. This is what the U.S. Navy is calling its unified command. So they're bringing together communications between the Coast Guard, so between the Coast Guard, the U.S. Navy, as well as Canadian officials. You heard them mention there, and this is an important point, that the U.S. Coast Guard simply doesn't have the knowledge or the equipment to carry out this search and rescue mission. And that is why we're seeing such an international effort now, bringing in various countries. We have equipment on the way from France. We've heard from Canada and the U.S. as well. In addition, commercial agencies, commercial vessels, they're on the scene as well. And that's because this is such a difficult operation. It's very far away from the coastline, and it's such a deep site as well that this is going to be all hands on deck. And as we heard during the press conference, this really is a full court press. That's how they're describing it.
Yeah, and everything you've outlined there, Cole, suggests it takes time. The logistics that need to now fall into place for this search and rescue to really get underway. And yet, at the same time, we are told that there are just 40 hours left of breathable air on this vessel. The clock is ticking.
The clock is ticking, and time is really the most precious resource right now. This was a submersible that's not designed to spend days or weeks underneath the surface of the ocean like a submarine would. We believe it has about 96 hours, so 4 days worth of oxygen on board. Once that runs out, we're not sure what might happen, but there is potentially hope that it could last a bit longer than that. But about 4 days and more than 2 days have passed, so time is of the essence if they want to be able to reach the vessel in time. And there's one interesting note as well, that even if this submersible had come up to the surface and is waiting for
Take care.
rescue craft
Thanks,
to reach
Ganja
it,
Farmer.
they're not
Good to
able
see you.
open the submersible from the inside.
I was actually thinking about you the other day. Ganja Farmer, how come we don't see you on Lab After Dark? That seems like it would be a perfect place for you.
And hearing some reports from people that have been on this craft before, from a CBS reporter as well, that this is something that can only be opened from the outside. There's 17 bolts, and that is simply because you want to make this as watertight as possible.
Oh, man. Massachusetts mama, thank you so much for bringing this up. I'm also fascinated by that.
Especially at those depths. So whether it's below the ocean, whether it's above the ocean, this vessel needs to be found in order for those 5 people that are on board to be rescued.
For now, Cole, thank you. That's Cole Nassman there, live in Boston for us. Let's speak to David Gallo, who is an American oceanographer and a deep-sea explorer. He co-led an exploration of the Titanic in 2010 and co-led the successful international effort to locate the wreck site of Air France Flight
Wait a minute.
447.
Did somebody
Thank
say
you,
we have
David, for
30
being with us.
likes?
You must plan
That can't.
for things like this happening. I guess you hope, you pray that you will never.
That can't be true. I'm going to go look right this second. Hold on. I can't tell. All right. That's acceptable. It's like 30 likes. That can't be it.
Never.
I don't even know what the.
left
Oh,
to find people
jeez.
on board. The shallow on the diving community.
I don't even know what the likes do. Maybe it makes you feel loved. I don't know.
A very small community, particularly in that part of the world. Many of you know each other, so
Why is his?
it is
Like, why is his camera like that? Why is his camera like that?
very worrying time for anyone involved in it. Describe to me, if you will, a little bit about the descent, because it's very difficult for people who are not familiar with this sort of thing to get their head around quite how deep it is, where the Titanic lies on the bottom of the ocean. And we often say, don't we, that we know more about space than we do about the bottom of our own oceans, such as the depth and the complexity of getting down there.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we've only explored maybe 10% of the world's oceans, and in that 10%, we find things that we never expected. The world's greatest mountain range, highest mountain peaks, deepest and longest valleys, underwater rivers, underwater waterfalls, underwater lakes. So it's not a big blue fishbowl.
Underwater lakes, underwater what?
And any underwater mountain peaks, deepest and longest, never expected. The world's greatest mountain range, highest mountain peaks, deepest and longest valleys, underwater rivers, underwater waterfalls, underwater lakes. So it's not a big blue fishbowl. And any
Dude, what if that dog just took a dump right there?
expedition that takes you deep into the ocean, it's almost like going to a totally different planet. You at the surface, you have that lovely color blue that we're all familiar with of the shallow ocean, and then you begin the dive. You pass through that blue into medium blue, deep blue, then dark blue, and then for 2 hours, it's about 2.5 hour trip altogether.
Interesting.
But about 2 of those, it's in perfectly pitch black, and up on the top, we call it the twilight zone, that transition from blue to deep blue. But the rest of it is the midnight zone. And no light has ever been there. The sun has never been there. And it's very cold, too. So by the time you get to the bottom, you realize you're in a totally different space. And in the earlier comments, you heard that you could be a meter or 5 meters from the Titanic and never know that it's right there because it's.
But you're
jacked
looking
up.
out, Amy. Appreciate
And,
that.
sun lights don't penetrate the ocean very far. You can't use radio waves in the ocean, so GPS is out and radio communications are out. So
Interesting.
it's just not what people think. I think a lot of people feel that it's just a dive to a deeper place, but it's not. You're leaving the world that we know, the familiar world, behind and entering this very unfamiliar world. Even Titanic, that's been visited many, many times, where we find something new almost every expedition to Titanic.
It really is fascinating to hear.
Not, I mean, what really?
You describe it in those terms, and it really gives you a sense of what those rescue efforts will be up against right now. And David, there are some reports of an emergency ping, an alert that may have come from the vessel. And I guess at this point, we don't know whether that was generated by those on board or it was done automatically. And if anything, that just reinforces the idea of quite how remote and quite how isolated those people may feel right now. There is no radio connection. You can't just radio back to the ship above. Talk to me about the difficulty of communicating with a vessel at such depths.
Well, yeah.
Mr. G. Brooks says, I figure life's a gift and I don't intend on wasting it. You know, what hand you never know. You don't know what hand you're going to get dealt next. You learn to take life as it comes at you, to make each day count. Jack from the Titanic. Yeah.
I mean, you can't, there's no radio waves, as I said, so you have to use sound, and you can do that, but the bandwidth, if you want to call it that way, you certainly can't have a conversation more than to say, okay, not okay, here we are, that kind of thing. Sometimes you use code, almost like a telegraph to send beep, 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 and there's a code that you know what that means. We're okay. That means we're in trouble. The idea that there's a ping, I lived through the Malaysian Air incident, that year long, trying to find the Malaysian Air, and there's so many rumors about. Then there were pings that we know we've got it. Tomorrow we're going to have it. Boy,
The Malaysian Air is still one of the great mysteries of the world.
You're the ping, and it was not from the aircraft at all. So I'm careful to look at those. You can't help but not pay attention to those because it might be true, and I think you have to check that out. But I don't know if there was a ping, where it would have come from, if the sub had that ability to send out a ping. Don't know.
David, I'm really grateful for you talking.
Oh, I
The
think
international effort
this will
to
be good.
find and rescue a missing submersible is continuing.
So this is where they talk about how it'll be rescued, I think.
Tonight, the U.S. Navy is also sending crews and special lifting equipment to help if the missing craft can be found. The challenges
I'll
are
paint you.
enormous, and the situation is becoming
Girth, I'll paint you if that's what you want.
more desperate by the hour.
Rescuers are racing
I'm not any good at it.
against the clock and a dwindling oxygen supply to find the submersible lost at sea.
This operation is our top priority.
This afternoon, U.S. Coast Guard officials in Boston updated the
If you guys think about it like this, and I followed the Malaysian airline, and I do want to watch. I haven't watched the thing on Netflix yet, but I should. I haven't. One of the craziest things about that is, I mean, there is no way. There's no way that a plane should be able to vanish off the face of the earth the way that it did. I mean, there were so many You want to talk about safety protocols. You want to talk about communication. It's just unheard of.
Public on what they called an incredibly complex operation.
Since Sunday, the Coast Guard has coordinated search efforts with the U.S. and Canadian Coast Guard, Air National Guard aircraft, and the Polar Prince.
I agree.
Which has searched a combined 7,600 square miles, an area larger than the state of Connecticut. To date, those search efforts have not yielded any results.
For the
Thanks for
5
being here,
passengers
Celeste.
on board, time is of the essence.
We know there's about 40 hours of breathable
I
air,
know.
left based on that initial report.
Owned by Washington State-based Ocean Gate Expeditions, the vessel, known as the Titan, takes passengers deep into the sea to view wreckage of the Titanic, all for about $250,000 a person. The submersible began its descent Sunday morning near where the Titanic went down, about 400 nautical miles south of St. John's, Newfoundland. All contact was lost about an hour and 45 minutes after it began its dive. No one at the surface knows why. The day before, one of the passengers, British billionaire Hamish Harding, said this year brought, quote, the worst winter in Newfoundland in 40 years, but, quote, a weather window had just opened up to attempt a dive. Rescuers report the water in the area is fairly calm, but their search covers a vast expanse of ocean, both on the surface and below. The Titanic's wreckage rests about 12,500 feet, or more than 2 miles underwater. That's equivalent
can
to
look. Hold
10
on.
Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other, more than twice the depth of the Grand Canyon. Those on board the vessel include Harding, chairman of the company Action Aviation. Also aboard the vessel is OceanGate founder and CEO Stockton Rush. Shahzada Dawood, a British Pakistani executive at one of Pakistan's largest conglomerates, and his
It's called MH370, the plane that disappeared.
son Suleiman, and French explorer Paul-Henri Nargeolet, director of the company that owns the rights to the Titanic's wreckage. Rescuers today say their focus is on locating the vessel. Though if found, it's unclear how or if they could retrieve it.
We have a group of our nation's best experts in the Unified Command, and if we get to that point, those experts will be looking at what the next course of action is.
Search and how a possible rescue could be carried out. I'm joined by retired U.S. Navy submarine captain David Marquet. Captain Marquet, welcome. You heard what the rescuers are up against there. If that vessel hasn't surfaced somehow and is still underwater, how are they carrying out a search like this? What are they looking for and what are they doing?
There's two components to the search. First, there's the search on the surface of the water. This can happen. You can cover wide areas with airplanes that fly relatively quickly and they have radars, and it's getting dark, but during the daytime, you also use your eyeballs. And so they can cover a wide area. I'm pretty confident if that ship were at the surface, it would have been found by now. Underwater at the depths where the Titanic is, 2.5 miles down, it's a totally different story. First of all, you hope that if they were in there and they were capable, they would be making noises. They would be using pingers or the underwater telephone or just simply banging on the hull of the submarine. And those sounds would be picked up by the sonar buoys, which are being dropped, and the other ships that are listening. We're not hearing that either. So now I'm fearful that something catastrophic has happened, because when there's an abrupt termination of communications like that, that would signal multiple systems going down at the same time, or one catastrophic failure, which affected the entire vessel.
Captain Marquet, if they even located the vessel, what then? What can they do? Is there a way to tow it to the surface to rescue people underwater?
Yeah, there's no way to rescue people underwater on this type of a ship. What you need to do that is you need two ships with the same type of mating surface that they would then come together. And this ship, the hatch is bolted on from the outside. It doesn't have that kind of a mating surface. And the rescue ships that had those kind of mating surfaces have been retired and don't go that deep anyway. So that's not the way to do it. We need to get that ship up to the surface. You either need to use lifting equipment, which somehow comes under, like a sled that would come under it.
I'm not going to paint them.
And go up.
It's not happening.
That's got to be placed there.
I'm not a painter.
Or we drop a 2-mile cable with a hook on it And then we have a ROV down low, which finds the submarine, gets it hooked, and then we can reel it up to the surface.
I don't have any
Again,
French
this
girls.
takes time because we need to get that equipment also, first of all, to Newfoundland, and then on a ship and out to the wreck of the Titanic, which is 400 miles away.
You may have seen there's some new reporting today that leaders in this submersibles industry back in 2018 sent a letter to the CEO, who was the pilot of this vessel, expressing concerns that he wasn't sticking to their standards and guidelines of the industry and warning of a catastrophic potential ahead. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, that's reported in the New York Times. That's a remarkable letter. And we see this tug with innovation, where innovation might get ahead of regulation and the ability, the governing laws in terms of how those particular vessels.
Yeah, I know. Still not painting them.
It should operate, and then it goes
I
back
don't
and
know.
forth. And
I'm pretty good with pastels.
I admire the spirit of innovation and pushing the boundaries and not wanting to be fettered by rules that are written in the industrial age. But at the same time, we have people's lives here. And
That was a nightmare. And I never even told you. So I painted with this pop filter, as they call it. I painted it red, and it stained my hand. And then when I finished it and I put it on, when I would talk, because one of the things is I keep my microphone. That's what these microphones are. You keep them right in front of your face. You're kissing the damn thing. But check this out. The smell of paint never went away. So when I'd finish, it would be like, oh my God, I have a headache.
in the United States Navy, we take great care of our submarines. They're designed brilliantly with multiple redundancies. If we need one pump, we put in two. If we need two pumps, we put in three. We do operate through operational procedures. For example, if we haven't used the submarine in a while, we go to sea. Even before we go to sea, we're going to test everything at the dock. Then we go to sea in shallow water, submerge just a little bit, run around with flashlights, check everything. It's a very deliberate, slow, methodical process.
I think I did.
It's hard for me to see how a commercial company is going to have as many resources as we would apply to keeping our submarines safe at sea. It's a very, very harsh environment. The pressure is 380 times atmospheric pressure when you're down at that depth.
That is retired U.S. Navy submarine captain David Marquet joining us today.
Thanks, David. Thank you guys for being here as well. Appreciate it. The super chats and the stickers, Girth, Kathy Lynch, and Fun Size. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you guys being here. I'll catch you next time. I'm out.
Oh my.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Like I said, if we get any breaking news on this at any point, we'll come back and we'll talk about it some more.
Oh my.